We made it! After a pretty challenging flight and a hellacious crosswind, we made it to Ord, Nebraska, hometown of Evelyn Sharp, the lady my plane's named after. And I'd like to tell you guys a little bit about her life, and unfortunately not a lot of people know about her, so I'm using this plane to bring attention to Evelyn Sharp and what she did. This is my 1946 Luscombe 8E. I became its current caretaker in June of 2021. My wife and I like to name our vehicles, and she came up with the name Evelyn. It seemed like an appropriate 1940s name. I did some Googling, and I came across the Wikipedia page of aviatrix Evelyn Sharp. To my surprise, I'd never heard of her, and neither had many folks I talked to. But she was quite a successful pilot back in the late 30s and early 40s, until her career was cut short by a tragedy. So I thought, why not use this plane, which draws attention with its age and shine, to tell Evelyn's story and represent her. I traced her signature from a postcard and stuck it on the right side of the plane, and for the left side I commissioned Chad Hill at Django Studios to create nose art based on her picture. I wrote a quick one-page story about her to hang as a poster whenever the plane was at an event so people could learn about Evelyn. Now, I'm flying to Boulder, Colorado for the 1940s ball where the plane will be on display. On the way, so coming from Iowa, I plan to make a stop in Ord, Nebraska, where Evelyn grew up and learned to fly. As you can see, the weather is starting to deteriorate a little bit, and I was forced to make an unscheduled stop at Harlan, Iowa. I waited out the rain and the clouds and added an additional fuel stop in Columbus, Nebraska, just so I had enough fuel to get to Ord and divert as necessary, because it was starting to get pretty windy. As we get further west, the terrain starts to change, and now I'm over the Sandhills of Nebraska. This terrain hasn't changed much since Evelyn learned to fly here back in the 30s. It's also getting very hot and very bumpy, and this was a pretty rough part of the ride. As I'm looking ahead, Ord is also getting an increasingly stronger crosswind, so I'm glad I planned the extra fuel to divert as needed. I followed the North Loop River in right through Ord, and these pastures around town are actually where Evelyn learned how to fly. They didn't have an airport back then, so any one of these pastures was fair game to take off and land in. The approach to the Ord airport takes us over the cemetery where Evelyn is buried. It's a pretty poignant moment, but I really need to pay attention to my flying right now as that wind is challenging. You can see the left wing dipping down to stay aligned with the runway. You wouldn't land a tail dragger with minimal sideways drift, and Luscombes particularly are notorious for having weak landing gear if you side-loaded. I touch down with my left tire first, and keep the stick to the left to negate any kind of side loads or drift. I slowly lower the rest of the wheels, and once I'm fully on the ground, I'm pretty relieved to be finally at Evelyn Sharp Field in Ord, Nebraska. Evelyn was buried on Easter Sunday, April 9th, 1944. She's surrounded by her parents, John and Mary Sharp. However, these are not Evelyn's biological parents. Evelyn was actually adopted. She was born in Millstone, Montana in October of 1919 to a lady named Elsie Krause. Her birth name was actually Lois Genevieve Krause. She was adopted by John and Mary Sharp, who were unable to have their own child 2 months later in December of 1919. At this point, her name was changed to Evelyn Genevieve Sharp. The Sharps moved to Ord, Nebraska in March of 1929. John had a lot of little businesses here and there, and among them he had an ice cream business in which Evelyn helped sell ice cream. Evelyn started high school in 1933 in the midst of an economic downturn. The Sharps also had a little cafe right here. There's a fire station there now, and they rented out rooms. One of their tenants, Jack Jefford, who was a flight instructor, was unable to pay his rent, and so the Sharps agreed to have him teach Evelyn how to fly in exchange. And so on February 4th, 1935, at 14 years old, Evelyn had her first flight lesson and she was hooked. During the same time, the Dust Bowl was raging, and with millions of pounds of soil in the air, I imagine she probably missed a few lessons because of that. After 13 hours, Evelyn soloed on March 4th, 1936. She was 15 years old. This was a pretty significant achievement and everyone was in on the celebration. She got her full license November 9th, 1936 at 50 hours, which was the minimum at the time. She was 17 years old. She graduated high school May of 1937, graduating as the best girl athlete of Ord High. She started work on her transport license or commercial license, needing 200 hours. She had a hard time finding a plane to fly, and the city leaders of Ord came up with a plan. They rallied around young Evelyn and raised money so she could have a down payment to buy her own airplane in exchange for promoting the Ord area. In August of 1937, she took possession of her own Taylor Cub, the Ord. It's pretty remarkable that a small town in Nebraska during the Depression was able to pull this off. Late in 1937, she attempted her transport exam but failed, but later, in May of 1938, she passed, becoming the youngest female transport pilot in the US. She now had a license to make money with airplanes. She flew the mail, but she also gave many hundreds, if not thousands, of rides for 50 cents to $1 a piece. This was a great way to promote aviation in Nebraska. She became quite the ambassador for the North Loop River region and actually became a national celebrity at that. In June of 1940, she joined the civilian pilot training program with an instructor rating, being one of the youngest female instructors in the country. This is where she started flying a Luscombe, much like the plane I've dedicated to her. She taught many men how to fly, and many of those went on to join the Army Air Forces and became influential aviators as well. In September of 1941, she had nearly 2,000 flying hours at age 23. It was around this time that she received a telegram inviting her to try out for this new transport unit. She passed a very thorough examination, and on October 20th, she became the 17th accepted WAFS pilot, with nearly 3,000 hours to her name. This was the highest of all candidates. Evelyn completed her Army Air training by November, and she was based in Wilmington, Delaware. It was here that she was actually near her biological mom, Aunt Elsie. Evelyn didn't know she was adopted at this point. Aunt Elsie visited, but her visit was cut short as the girls got their first official ferrying job. This picture was taken by Aunt Elsie of Evelyn in her full uniform. Biological mom was certainly as proud as her adopted parents. The girls' first mission was to ferry PT-19As from the Fairchild factory in Maryland down to Chattanooga. This ended up being quite a success, and the girls became busier and busier after that, ferrying aircraft all over the country. Evelyn continued her training and earned ratings in just about every airplane the Air Force had. This is Evelyn's incredibly impressive qualification card. Just look at that collection of airplanes on there. On March 29, 1944, after 3 hours and 20 minutes of flying time, she was signed off to fly the P-38. The P-38 was a single-seat, twin-piston engine aircraft with a distinctive twin-boom design. This fighter was incredibly effective in both the European and Pacific theater, in part due to its high performance and long-range capability. Like most new aircraft, it had some handling quirks that unfortunately killed pilots. Until they figured that out, it had a bit of a reputation. Among that, it was a handful flying single engine. The day after getting checked out in the P-38, she received orders to deliver one of these from Long Beach, California, all the way to Newark, New Jersey. She left Long Beach March 31st, and by April 3rd, she was getting ready to take off out of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Perhaps as she was getting ready to take off, she was thinking about her options if she suffered a low-altitude engine failure, or even worse, one on takeoff. Focusing back on her checklist, she got everything in order, and with no reason not to take off, she applied full power and started roaring down the runway. She pulled back at about 70, getting the aircraft in the air. However, right away she knew something was wrong. The left engine wasn't producing power. She reduced power on the right engine in order not to flip over and put in more right rudder to compensate for the drift. This reduced her ability to climb.
The left engine faltered, it kind of caught on again, and then it fully died. More right rudder, less power, and now the heavy P-38 was really struggling to fly. Evelyn knew she didn't have a lot of time and she really needed to start to find a place to put this thing down. A few feet above the partially thawed ground, Evelyn pulled back sharply on the control wheel. The plane shuddered as the nose tried to come up. With no more lift, the P-38 stalled, hanging in the air for a brief moment. The descending aircraft struck a cluster of trees and hit the ground in a flat position. The P-38 skidded broadside a distance of about 10 feet. Inside the cockpit, the second hand on the clock stopped moving. The time was 10:30 a.m. Lieutenant Evelyn G. Sharp came to her death on the 3rd day of April, 1944 at 10:30 a.m. by means of severe traumatic shock, compound comminuted fractures of the skull and face, broken neck, crushed chest, crushed pelvis, fractures of upper and lower extremities, internal injuries, massive hemorrhage. The violent impact of the P-38's pancake landing had driven the retracted nose wheel into the cockpit, breaking the straps on her safety harness. The force catapulted Evelyn out through the bubble canopy. She had died instantly. Evelyn was sent back with $200 collected from her friends and fellow pilots. She did not get any military honors and was not considered a veteran. It would take many decades for that distinction to come down, but that's a story for a different time. I will list some more of the resources in the description of the video, especially the book that I read from and used pictures out of. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this. It is my absolute pleasure and honor to use my plane to tell the story of Evelyn Sharp.